the detention and prosecution of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa, who are pursuing the restoration of Biafra nation by Nigerian state and Britain, using their influence as the former colonial master against Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa, who is presently being detained in Finland. Their detention is highly connected with the oil resources in Biafra land. There is a great fear by the government of Nigeria, presently controlled by the APC, Pres.Tinubu, and the British government, who controls the Nigerian oil resources industry in proxy, that the attainment of Biafran nation will indeed affect their control over oil industry in Biafra land. This was first practiced between 1967 to 1970, and it became a classified norm for them to control the oil resources in Biafra land, always known by them as Eastern Region. This brings us to the caption of this program, Pres.Tinubu's New Oil Empire and the detention of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa. Everyone is aware that President Tinubu is always obsessed with wealth, with money, with acquisition of financial empire. This, as a student, he was involved in what became a scandal of money laundering and drug business in the United States as a student. As a governor, according to Premium Times of 20th August 2022, in a special report, 11 forgotten cases of alleged corruption by former Nigerian state governors, of which the former governor of Lagos State, Pres.Tinubu, was among the indicted by EFCC, the Financial Crime Commission of Nigeria, of which Tinubu today is the Nigerian president in charge of the entire resources of Nigeria. Before President Tinubu came into power, he was able to study the statistics of wealth of former Nigerian presidents and how they made their money. That made him to be obsessed to become the president of Nigeria, to make his own wealth through that process. As a wise man, he used every tactics, including denying the Southeast their presidential zone period, to queue into the Nigerian heads of state oil magnates. He studied how Nigerian former presidents and some ministers stay in their houses, in their bedrooms, without rancor and unchallenged, become millionaires through a free oil pipeline flowing from southeastern region of Nigeria to their business partners abroad. And the current Nigerian president, President Ahmed Tinubu, realized that this can only be possible by making its way into the presidency. And once you get the presidency, you are in charge and control. Having viewed the wide field of the oil industry that comes from the southeastern region of Nigeria, named Biafra nation, he became obsessed once again to maintain the British status quo of one Nigerian indivisibility policy, and quickly renounced and pulled back his earlier ideology of I don't believe in one Nigeria. This was based on the wide field of oil and gas deposits and extractions in southeastern region of Nigeria, of which that led to the hostage of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu in Nigerian DSS detention camp, controlled by both the late Muhammad Buhari's boys and now the President Ahmed Tinubu's boys, while Nigeria and Britain coordinated the detention of Mazi Simon Ekpa with the agreement of Finland, using the legal systems and proceedings as a cover-up to all these atrocities, to ensure that Biafra never comes in order to maintain oil and gas industry control in Biafra land. Tinubu indeed never came to rule Nigeria as a patriot. He came to acquire his own oil industry, his own oil empire in southeastern region of Nigeria, which he is aware that there are freedom fighters who want to restore the defunct Biafran nation led by Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, a political activist, with also the assistance of Simon Ekpa, who took over the struggle after Buhari kidnapped Mazi Nnamdi Kanu in Kenya and renditioned him back to Nigeria. As President Tinubu assumed office, he saw the wide range and opportunities in the oil and gas industry and decided go against whosoever that will disrupt his oil empire in the region. There is no doubt that the study has shown that the oil and gas industry in Biafra land is meant for those at the higher hierarchy, provided they pay their allegiance to Britain and maintain their status quo, allowing Britain to operate as they wish without interrupting the flow of oil from Biafra land to Britain. Therefore, anyone standing against any corruption of the leadership, seeking for accountability, equitability, and justice becomes a threat to Britain, becomes a threat to Nigerian national security, and against the state of Nigeria and foreign partners. This is why the hostage of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa is paramount to both Nigeria and those allies who depended on the oil flow from the Biafra land, with the fear that they might lose their contract after the independence of Biafra. Many people have been wondering why Nigerian government and Britain are obsessed in making sure that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa remain in detention. It is indeed important for them to note that these are the reasons. They are not holding them because they want them to be there. They are holding them because they believe that the independence of Biafran nation will jeopardize and strip them of their oil wells and gas industry they have acquired and established for years. It is with this mode that President Tinubu continued to acquire the gas and oil wells in Biafra land today. People must understand, like I stated earlier, that Tinubu did not come to rule Nigeria to provide amenities and put Nigeria in a very orderly mood. He has the right and the power to regionalize Nigeria. He has the right to say the three cardinal regions, British colonial regime, amalgamated together as one Nigeria, can go their separate ways. He has the right to do it and pass it into law. But if he regionalizes the Nigerian state as it was before 1960, he and their groups will lose their oil wells to the regions. That is where they have problem, and that is why they do not want to regionalize the nation or allow Biafran nation to leave Nigeria. With this in mind, they are much interested in the oil industry and the possession of the oil wells from the Biafra land or southeastern region of Nigeria, irrespective of their divisions, which they made in order to allow the free flow without challenge of oil from the South-South, as they named it, by the Southeastern region, or trying to interfere by telling the South-South, why do you allow your oil wells to be taken freely by those who occupy the power of the nation? The separation policy was introduced in 1967 by British government of Harold Wilson through Yakubu Gowon, who was a puppet during the Civil War. Going back to the obsession of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the president of Nigeria. Like I stated earlier, the motive of President Ahmed Tinubu is to acquire his own oil empire, which he had already done. Within the space of 1 year he came into power, President Ahmed Tinubu took steps to privatize the oil and gas industry in Nigeria, which the public was not formally informed, and this privatization advertised for at least 1 year before it could be privatized. But it appears it was done secretly, and we will listen or read from what the newspapers stated, especially from Abubakar Atiku, who has been in power as vice president and knew what the oil industry of Nigeria looks like and how it has been under the control of the presidency, and they acquire the wealth for themselves and their families. We will listen and know the reason why Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa had been detained. They are detained, I repeat once again, because the presidency, those who have ruled Nigeria between 1967 to the present day, are making their wealth from the oil industry of Nigeria. Therefore, whosoever that interrupts them is making a big war against them. They use the Nigerian state and the Nigerian agencies to go against the person for their own personal advantage and not the advantage of the entire nation or populace. Let's go back to this publication of Guardian newspapers of 25th August 2024, whereby Atiku slams Tinubu over oil sector favoritism. The question is, what was the favoritism Atiku was talking about? It is, I quote, Atiku questions Tinubu's interest on hasty approval of any sale to Ondo Oil and Gas PLC, a company controlled by the Tinubu's nephew, Wale Tinubu. They accuse Tinubu of acting and implementing an accelerated approval for the purchase of onshore assets of IKIP and any oil companies and gas in Nigeria, unquote. Stressing more on this very topic, Daily Post Nigeria stated, I quote, on the 25th August 2024, explain why Ondo got accelerated approval. Within just 8 months, the Nigerian Upstream Production Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, approved a deal which saw the investment of Eni and Ajib onshore assets to Ondo. So with all these acquisitions by the president and his nephew, it becomes difficult to allow Biafra to live or allow Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, who they fear if he is released will continue the agitation of Biafra, having refused millions and assets offered to him by various government and businessmen within the industry. As stated by the former president Atiku, stated, and I quote, the 2023 presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party knocked the House of Representatives of Nigeria for failing to take proper action on the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, which he said had gone ahead to mortgage the Nigerian national oil assets to vested interest, unquote. To conclude this acquisition, he continued, the government of Tinubu withdrew the litigation against Shell/Eni in the OPL 245 scandal in what has been described as quid pro quo, unquote. All these are making it more difficult for the judiciary and indeed Justice Omotosho to do justice to this very case, Nigeria versus Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and Nigeria/Finland versus Mazi Simon Ekpa. How can it be? For instance, President Tinubu helps the Ondo PLC to complete 783 million acquisition of any subsidiary, which now makes the transaction increase of Ondo current participation interest in OML offshore oil interest, OMLS 60, 61, 62, and 63 from 20% to 40%. This is where the problem of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and Simon Ekpa lies. They are afraid of relinquishing these offshore oil wells in Biafra land. They do not only control all these oil wells, they also control the terminals, that is, the shipping points, where all these ships anchor and move oil to various nations of the world. With Tinubu's presidency, his nephew's company has become a participant and controls most of the terminals and ship oils for various international companies based in various parts of Biafra nation. Example, Shell. Shell is a British multinational company. It owns 2 terminals in Nigeria, one at Bonny in Port Harcourt, then the next one is the Fakados in Brutu local government area of Delta State of Nigeria. The next is Chevron. Chevron is an American oil and gas company. It controls the Escravos terminal located in Warri, Delta State. Within the space of 1 year, President Tinubu came into power. The following terminals are operated by his nephew, Ondo Oil and Gas PLC, after taking them away from 1, Brass Terminal, which was formerly operated by Nigerian Aji Oil Company in Bayelsa State, the Pennington Terminal, formerly operated by Texaco Overseas Nigerian Petroleum Company, and where Igbo Terminal in Akwa Ibom State, operated by Mobil. It is stated that Mobil, Texaco, Ajib are being operated by Ondo Oil and Gas Industry. This is located in Akwa Ibom State, called Kwai Ibo Terminal. With all these terminals and the acquisition of the oil empire in Biafra land, it becomes difficult for Tinubu to release these assets to Biafra land should Biafra come. That is why the entire Biafra nation, the businessmen and women, those who love freedom from Nigeria, you cannot own properties and somebody from somewhere else come to acquire all these things. No Igbo man can acquire any oil industry, oil wells and offshore in Lagos State. You can only build your headquarters of your oil company in Lagos, Abuja, but you cannot be allowed to own oil wells in Ondo State, in Lagos State, in Ogun State, in Oyo State as an Igbo man. It is impossible. They will destroy it and burn it. That is the reality. But they will take it in Biafra land and still imprison the citizen and ask you, what can you do? It is unfortunate. It is a shame to Igbo people, no matter whatever you may think about the Biafra, it is a shame that you cannot fight for your own people, even if it costs you money and the time to organize such challenges. President Tinubu and their cousins and nephews are acquiring all these properties, all this oil and gas in Biafra land, but they are busy destroying the houses and homes of Biafrans, of Igbos in Lagos. Mr. Obi can only visit his own brother's compound where it was knocked down, that is Igbo man, but failed to visit various Igbo homes and properties destroyed by Shomo and Bola Ahmed Tinubu and cronies in Lagos and Abuja. With this, we come to the end of this very program. This program highlights the need to know the areas and why Tinubu and their group are playing politics with Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and Mazi Simon Ekpa's release. If you like this very program, please do not fail to put your comments down and air your own view. Give us thumb up, like, share, and comment objectively. Thank you, and God bless you all. Till we come to you with another interesting program. Bye.